Welcome to the paranormal and metaphysical world of Twilight Tonight. Host Dee Moonflyer grew up with very open-minded parents who had many experiences with UFOs and the paranormal. Because of her mom's insistence on exposing her to spiritual classes, meditation, and teachings of Edgar Cayce, Dee had a fascination and deep interest in the paranormal. Her own paranormal experiences have led her to seek out and interview other fascinating, knowledgeable people for better understanding of this phenomenon. Now, your host of Twilight Tonight, Dee Moonflyer.
Happy Friday, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Welcome to Twilight Tonight, WLTK-DB. Tonight, I have, of course, an amazing guest. As you know, all of the guests here are amazing, but I particularly love this guest. He's been on my podcast, Twilight Tonic Paranormal Podcast, and he's a Bigfoot researcher for Raquel Bigfoot. His name is Terry Windell. Welcome, Terry.
Hello, Dee, and hello to your viewers.
Hi, Terry. How are you?
I am well. I hope you're doing the same, and I am thrilled to be here tonight.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you here in person. This is the first time I've seen you in person, and I know that you've done years of work doing research on what you consider forest people, which I love, and you're huge into the environment, which I adore. But you're also a big advocate in no-kill Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I am, and that's actually, I prefer the term Bigfoot researcher to Bigfoot hunter, because hunter just has some really bad connotations.
yes.
And we'll get into this a little later when we start chatting, but if we have to kill a being like this to prove it's real, I don't need to prove it's real. And truly, I don't need to prove it's real anyway. I know they're real, so I'm not really worried about it.
Awesome. Terry, why? What even in the wildest dreams when you were a teenager did you think you'd be doing this?
Well, yes. I spent a lot of summers on my grandmother's farm in upstate South Carolina. It was about 2,000 acres. It was a generational farm, and it had gone back 3 generations before me, and 4. It was 2,000 acres of a combination of farmland, wooded, old growth, pine trees that were for pulpwood and timber, cultivated land for farms. Pretty much any kind of wildlife here in South Carolina you could think of: deer, turkey, hogs, you name it, it was there. The area had 3 natural springs, a couple of creeks, and it was adjacent to a major South Carolina river. So as a kid growing up, that was my playground. And this was back in the day when a 9 or 10-year-old kid could just go wander in the woods and not worry about too much as long as you were home an hour before sundown. And
Yep.
that's kind of where I got started, because every time I would go walking in the woods, I would get this feeling, not of fright or dread or anything, like something bad was going to happen, but a feeling that I was not alone. That if I just turned around quick enough, I'd see somebody duck behind a tree or behind a hill or behind a tree or something. And I didn't really understand what that was. Back then, there was no internet. You couldn't Google anything. So I just kind of started reading everything I could get my hands on to try and figure this out, and had a couple of things happen that I couldn't really explain. Saw a few things that were really strange, but I figured I'm imagining things, and would hear noises at night from the upstairs bedroom in my grandmother's house. I know what a bobcat sounds like. I know what the other wildlife sounds like, but occasionally I'd hear things that I didn't recognize.
Right.
And of course, now today I know exactly what I was hearing. But the first thing that clued me in is I saw the Legend of Boggy Creek when it came out, and that scared the bedoobers out of me because I knew exactly what was in those woods. But I enjoyed the woods, and what was out there had not hurt me before. So I just kind of trusted that it wouldn't hurt me going forward. And so far, they haven't, even into my research into different areas. It's all about respect. I've come to learn, you're in their home, treat it like their home, and be respectful, and don't trash it up, and talk to them, let them know what you're doing.
Absolutely. So when you were in your grandmother's house, do you think when you heard noises upstairs, do you think it was them?
I do. And again, I was 10 years old.
Right.
I would try and talk to my mom or somebody about it, and oh no, that's nothing. And don't you're just imagining things. And I'm like, I don't think so. But okay. And I've actually come to find out now that I've kind of become more public about what I do with my relatives. I had one of my cousins tell me an experience that he had that he had never told anyone. He was out hunting and had 3 or 4 dogs with him, and he was in an area that he was familiar with, but he said he smelled this really bad smell, and the dogs tore off down into a gully. He couldn't see what they were after or where they went. And then all of a sudden he heard yelping, and he said it was like something threw the dogs back up one at a time over the top of the gully, and they took off running home.
I don't blame him.
He said he had no idea what was going on. He followed the dogs because he was concerned about them, and no one had ever heard that story until I told him what I had run into. So you never know where things are going to come from. They're out there. Human beings a lot of times don't want to think that they're there,
Right.
because we don't like the idea that we may not be top dog on the food chain. Not to say that they would cook us and eat us or anything, but we just don't like the idea that we may not be number one.
Right. I find it interesting. Do you feel like they feel like they're endangered by us?
I think they know what guns are.
Absolutely.
I think they know what
yeah.
cameras are. I think they're a lot more intelligent than we give them credit for a lot of times. I don't think they're just some dumb ape. I think they're a people. And we can talk about that a little more, but I think they understand our intentions. I think they can read us, whether it's pheromones or sweat, or you hear people talk about mind speak. Now, I've never experienced mind speak, but I've only lived in this one head all my life, so how do I know
Right.
what happens in other people's heads? But I think they are much more aware of us and what we do and how we act than we give them credit for.
When you said that, I find it really interesting. There's a guy named Jeremiah in New York State, and he says they're on his property. And it was an interesting interview, and I'll have to send that to you because I think you'd really enjoy it. He said that he had a female on the property where he lives in upstate New York, actually pretty close to where my grandparents lived. And he said that he could hear them in his head, and there was a female in water, and he had a scope on his gun, and she basically told him, if you point that scope at me, you won't know what hit you.
Mm-hmm.
That she was going to go right after him because her young were close by.
Right. And I think my video has frozen
That's
again.
okay.
I'll just keep this is the
talking.
days of radio now.
Yes.
Yes, I think they are very aware of what happens, what we do. One of the things that I've started doing, and it sounds crazy, but I've had it work, is someone who is kind of my Bigfoot auntie, who taught me a lot of things, and I think they're probably listening right now. Kind of told me, just talk to them. You know, if something's going on or if you feel scared, talk to them. Let them know what you're doing. And the first time I tried that, I was like, well, I'm probably just talking to the dark, but yeah, I'll give it a shot. And it worked. It was in Georgia where I got poked in the shoulder when I was inside a tent, and had one walk up behind my tent and poke me in the shoulder. And my friend had actually seen them. We had walked back into an area behind my tent, and we're cleaning up trash, which is, I take a trash bag when I go out and pick up trash. And whether they saw us doing that or not, I have no clue. But I've been around this person long enough to know that they have certain isms and speeches and things that they say that mean something. So we were sitting around the campfire after all that, and I heard her say, I think I'm going to take a walk. Now, I know this person well enough to know that means I think we're going to have company.
Wow.
And she walked right back behind my tent. We're in the dark Georgia woods, no flashlight, no headlamp. She's walking like she's got built-in radar, and I'm just stumbling along and trying to keep up and not break an ankle on a root ball. And she stopped and said, well, they're here. And she starts talking to them. And I can't see anything. And I said, well, can I, I can't see them. Can I talk to them or something? She said, sure, introduce yourself. Just tell them your name. And I said, okay, well, hi guys, I'm Terry. I don't mean any harm. I'm just curious about you. I'm here with my friends, and I know I'm in your home, and I'll be respectful of you, but I don't mean any harm, and just want to let you know. And she kept talking, of course, of another 15 or 20 minutes, and then they supposedly left. I still couldn't see a thing. Mm-hmm. And I went back to my tent, crawled in my tent. I'm leaving out a lot of details, but during the night, I heard something walk up behind me on two legs. I know what a squirrel or a rat or a chipmunk hopping around at night sounds like. This was something on two legs. It was very heavy, walked up behind me and poked me in the shoulder through my tent.
Wow.
Into the tent wall. It didn't actually stick its hand in. So that was my first experience about talking to them. And I had something happen just recently up in the very tip of South Carolina. It was a festival that I was speaking at. The festival's in Westminster, South Carolina, and this was a little further up in the mountains, but still in South Carolina, where the talking to them made a difference. I'll be glad to tell you the story if you want. I just don't want to get us too far off track and start rambling.
Well, anytime I'm so interested, them as beings or species of something, I just find them really fascinating, how they communicate with us.
I agree. There's this new, well, it's not new, but I think I may have heard you guys chatting about it earlier, called light language. I don't quite understand that yet. That's something new to me, but apparently that's been around for a while, and some of my friends, the lady that I was just speaking with, are familiar with it. If you listen, you hear. If you get calm and just sit, that's when things happen at least for me. I don't go out and walk around in the woods stomping around in the middle of the night. I've had much better results if you just take a chair, find a spot, sit down, be quiet, play some quiet music or read a book, or just, if you're with friends, just talk. And if they're around and they're interested, they'll find you. So when people ask me, they kind of ask me snidely when they find out what I do. So have you found Bigfoot yet? And I'll say, well, no, but he's found me a couple of times.
Right.
And that usually kind of makes them pause a minute. But I've just had better results doing that than chasing. You know, if you sit and they're curious and they're there, and they are curious about us a lot of times, they'll find you.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And two, you're really, really a big advocate on the environment. And I believe you told me last interview, you know, every time you're at a campground, you will pick up trash around the area. I feel like we're very intrusive on their territories. And I feel like, I don't know if I was one of them, if I would really want to know the human race. Do you find that they choose certain people to talk to? I know my native relatives always talked about them.
Mm-hmm. I do. I think, again, I think they have some way of knowing what's in our hearts. I can't explain it all yet. That's why I'm still doing what I'm doing. But I do think they have a way to gauge what each individual is about. I don't know how, but if you, and again, that's why my logo has the part about respect between us. Respect is key. You know, if we have respect with each other, there'll be no problems. And I think when a lot of people have these, what they call violent episodes,
Yeah.
I think they have been disrespectful in some way, because my first question to the people when I hear somebody talk about that is, well, what were you doing? Were you between them and a food source, and Mrs. Bigfoot sent Mr. Bigfoot out for groceries, and he's got to feed his kids.
Yeah.
If he comes home empty-handed, you know what's going to happen. So,
The same thing that happens to you guys, right?
Yeah. So I do think it's a lot about just respecting them. You know, respect has to be earned, and if you, over time, if you're respectful of them, I think they understand that, and they feel more comfortable around you.
So Terry, when you approach them, do you approach actual family units where you have seen the little guys, the mama and daddy, and the whole nine yards? Have you come across family packs?
Yes, but let me, full disclosure, I have never seen one in the clear. I have seen shadows. I have seen evidence of them. I have seen something that was a big dark shadow walk through my camp one night, but I have never seen one in the clear. So, you know, that's my next goal. I want to see one. But
do you smell them? That's my next
yes.
question.
Oh, yes.
Because they say
You
they're very strong.
They can be, and I think that is either a warning or some type of defense mechanism or something. And it is the absolute worst smell you have ever smelled in your life. It is a cross between wet dog, rotten meat, and moldy carpet, and that doesn't really come close. But I have been close on several occasions to at least one or two of them up in the Uwharrie National Forest, where I've done a lot of research. I actually I have rocks thrown at me when I go up there. My very first outing there, I had a rock thrown into camp.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
And they're not trying to hit us. If they wanted to hit us, they could bean us anytime they wanted to. They're either trying to get our attention to see what we'll do, or it's a way if there's more than one and one of them needs to move to get away from us without being seen, that's, I think, another way, a way that they use to distract us. They'll throw a rock and you look where the rock hits. Well, the other one gets to move now while you're not looking. So again, that's something I don't completely understand.
Right.
But, again, if they wanted to hit us with a rock, they could hit us anytime they wanted to.
I've heard several other Bigfoot researchers talk about tree peeking. Have you ever experienced the little peeking from the trees? I find that really cute and fascinating that they love to hide, but they like to peek around trees.
They are very curious about us. I think the young ones in particular are. I have not. I'm usually, up until not long ago, I was usually the guy with the camera that was, running around with a camera in everybody's face, which I don't do anymore. I've learned better than to do that.
Right.
But that was more of what I was feeling on my grandmother's, that there was just somebody watching me. And when I would turn around, there would be nobody there, of course.
Of course.
But you just couldn't shake the feeling that there was somebody watching. So I've never seen that. I know people that have. I've seen pictures of people, or pictures that people have taken of tree peekers. But again, I think they are often as curious about us as we are about them.
Yeah, it would make sense. I mean, we cohabitate and we invade and
Yeah, and I think they do live in family units. So if one of the and let me throw this out there, it interests me a lot of times when you start talking to people about Bigfoot, and they don't think that there's more than one or two of them. They think there's just a couple that move around all over the place. There are estimates that I've seen that there are thousands, if not tens of thousands of them. But for them to have been around for this long, there has to be a Mr. and a Mrs. Bigfoot, and then there have to be junior Bigfoots.
right.
So it would only make sense that they live in family groups. And again, that's how I think they're like us. So oftentimes we can possibly stumble into a family group and get too close and not realize it. That's what happened to me up in upstate South Carolina at the Westminster Festival the night that I was sleeping in a house up in the mountains between festival days. And I was there with another person, and whom I know very well, and we were there was a trail that led from the house that we were in, and so I'm just sitting there. It's about 12:30 at night. We're sitting around the campfire, unwinding from speaking at the festival, and I just look up and go, "I'm going for a walk." And from behind me, I hear my friend's voice go, "Well, Terry is clearly crazy, but I'm going with him." No flashlight, no headlamps, no IR, no nothing. We're just going to go walk down this trail. And the short version of it is we had some activity. We heard howls start up all the way down at the far end of the trail, and they would get closer to us. Dogs were going off left and right, and it was coming toward us. And then we thought we saw something. The trail had a dip in it, and we were a good ways away from the dip. You couldn't see what was in the valley, but we both think that there was a shadow there that looked like a head and shoulders of something that was not there initially. And when all this ended, that shadow was gone. We also saw what appeared to be a shadow off to the side of us, that when all this stuff ended, you heard this one really loud howl from the far end of the trail, and basically that was I took that to be Big Daddy calling the kids home, and
Right.
stuff was going to end. So the second night we went out and figured, well, heck, let's try this again. So my buddy and I went walking down this trail, and same thing, same pattern, everything started, except this time We saw the shadow in the valley, the dip. But this time, the shadow over towards the edge of the trail in front of us had reddish orange eyes that were looking at us.
Huh.
And we just kind of stood there for a minute, and both were like, "You seeing this?" And like, "Yeah, I'm seeing this." And I said, "Okay, you're seeing it too." So I said, "Let's walk up a little further." We took about 5 steps forward, and immediately, have you ever, there may be people out there, when you were a kid, you took a 9-volt battery and touched it to the tip of your tongue, and you got this
Yep.
little tick, boop.
Yep.
It didn't hurt, but it got your attention.
Yes.
Immediately, as soon as I took my 5th step, I felt something very similar to that start right in the center of my chest, and it fanned out through my entire body down to my fingertips and the tips of my toes. And I stopped, and I said, "Oh, this is weird." And my buddy standing beside me said, "What?" I said, "I don't know. I've never had this happen before, but it feels like," and before I could say anything, he said, "Electricity?" And I said, "Yeah."
That's
"You got it too?"
interesting.
He said, "Yeah." Now the eyes were still there. I said, "Okay, let's back up." He said, "Okay." I said, "Don't turn around. Let's just back up." We took 5 steps back, and like a switch, it was gone. And I kind of leaned over to him and said, "You got anything?" He said, "Nope." "You?" I said, "Nope, me neither." He said, "Okay, that's interesting." I said, "Tell you what, I'm going to try an experiment. Hang with me here. You stay here. I'm going to walk back up and see what happens."
Terry, hold on to that because we're going to take a short break, words from our sponsor, and then I want you to tell the rest of that story.
I'll be here.
Okay, thank you.
Have fun for a great cause. July 1st, 2023, the Broadhead Manor fundraiser. Help save the roof and restore this iconic building to its natural state. Make a donation to receive some amazing gifts like psychic readings, books by authors Chad Lewis, Todd Bates, and Christina Bloom, attire from Expedition Entity and We Are Paranormal, and much, much more. Join the fun July 1st at Broadhead Manor from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Bring the whole family. There will be face painting and games for the kids. Vendors, psychics, food, and music and karaoke by Boogie Nights for the adults. Broadhead Manor, where numerous spirits call home, located in Broadhead, Wisconsin. For more information, find them on Facebook.
Terry,
I'm still
are you-
here.
Okay, Terry, go
Yep,
ahead and
I
finish
just-
that story.
And I apologize again to your viewers. I'm having camera issues, so I figured rather than just look at me being stuttered there, they'd rather have something else more interesting.
Oh.
So we were standing there. We had just experienced what I would call static or a shock. It was very mild. This was not like what I've heard described as zapping. There was no fight or flight. There was no fear. There was no nausea. It was just a tingling that ran all through my body. And as soon as we backed up, it stopped. So I said to my buddy, "Okay, let's do an experiment. You stay here. I'm going to walk up back to where I was, and let's see what happens." Before I did my thing about talking to the dark and just said, "Okay, guys, me and my buddy don't mean you any harm. We're just here to try and learn about you. We think that we got too close last time, and we want to make sure we understood that you were telling us that we were too close. So my buddy is going to stay where he is. I'm going to walk back up to where I was before. And if that's too close for you, please do what you did before, just to me, but not to my buddy. Now, again, people are going to think, oh, you're crazy. You're talking to the dark. But I said, my buddy, I said, you ready? He said, yep. I said, all right, here I go. So I took those 5 steps back up again. Immediately, as soon as took the 5th step, bam, right back. Same thing. Tingling all through my body. I looked back over my shoulder and I said, you got anything? He said, nope. I said, okay, I do. Wow. So then again, I just said to the dark, all right, we get it. We're too close. We're going to back off. And, sorry if we disturbed you or anything. We're just going to back off. We don't mean any harm. So I backed up to him, gone like a switch. And by this point, all the activity that was going on around us, the dogs barking, the calls, howls in between, was still going on. And right after I got back to my buddy's spot, we started walking back, and we heard what I can only refer to as the Big Daddy howl. That when you've heard that before, you know exactly what that is. And I would take that again to mean, okay, kids, fun time's over. Come on back home.
Wow. Have you ever recorded any of those howls?
I have not. I have some good friends who have, and you don't forget them when you hear them.
I would love to hear one of those. That's fascinating.
I will see if I can find a good one to put up for you. This is usually what you hear described as the Ohio howl. It's the long, really deep that's far bigger lungs than anything that I know of has. It's not a dog. It's not a cougar, mountain lion roaring. This is something else. I've got a good friend who is an audio specialist who that's his thing. He records audio. And typically I'll sleep with a little recorder over my head on at night. Mostly it just picks up me snoring. But I've never been fortunate enough to get one of those. But he's got a couple. And you can look at the spectrum on the scope. It's outside the human range.
Right.
We can't make those noises. And it also doesn't match with anything that's in the international database of all known animal sounds. Wow. It's very much, when you start looking at things and analyzing the audio, it's kind of like what Ron Moorhead was doing with the samurai chatter. If you start looking at it and you see the waveforms and the amplitude and everything, the power that's in it, we can't do that. We don't have the lungs. So what else out there could? I don't know of anything unless there's a dinosaur or a bull elephant or something out roaming around in the woods in North America. So
now, when you say it's the Ohio call, obviously I know in Ohio there's been sightings. There's been sightings in Indiana and Michigan. So do you think they migrate?
I do. I think there are, like human beings are different. We're not all the same size. We're not all the same shape. I don't think they are all the same size and shape. I do think they migrate. I don't know if they particularly follow the deer or things like that. But I have been places before at certain times and you get nothing. And then you go back in the fall or another season and it's just wide open, crazy. So I do think they migrate. I do think they have a range that they tend to wander over. I think they look different from area to area.
That's what I've
the
heard,
ones out in the Pacific Northwest are typically much bigger, much heavier. It's cold out there. They need
that would
body
make sense.
mass. The ones in Florida, you hear the talk about the skunk ape. They tend to be smaller, the descriptions of them, and thinner, not as bulky. It's very hot in Florida. Having a big, huge, bulky body mass would not be a good thing.
I also heard they were more aggressive.
Yeah, and again, I think it depends on the individual ones, and what are we doing? Again, what have we done to provoke something? You always have to look at that. I don't. I have been close enough before, on many occasions, that if one of them wanted to hurt me, they could have easily hurt me, but they didn't. Now, I'm not saying throw caution to the wind and go in the woods and be stupid, but
Exactly.
I'm just saying, again, if you go in respecting that this is someone, not something, someone's home, I think that carries some weight. So, the aggressive part also, they're very big, they're loud. I've heard a couple of Native American friends of mine, one in particular, talk about it sounding like there's a bulldozer coming through the woods when one of them walks up, just because they're big, they're loud. That's just their nature. And we humans oftentimes can mistake that, I think, for aggression, when it may just be their way.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Out of curiosity, Terry, and I've talked to a couple people, and someone made a comment, Rose made a comment, is, why don't you feed them peanuts? I think feeding them, from my understanding, they become a little dependent on that. And I don't think our food is very good for them. And I could be completely wrong on this, but I've also heard people that fed them and then they left their home and then they keep coming back thinking they're going to be fed. Do you think
I would agree.
that's a bad idea?
I would agree. I have not done any feeding. The gifting that I've done is just restricted to marbles. They seem to like those for some reason.
Yeah, rocks and marbles.
Rocks and marbles. But yes, I have heard from folks, if you start feeding, you have made a contract of sorts with them. So they just expect, oh, well, hey, this is just normal business. And then all of a sudden you stop. They don't understand that. That's something that is, is just not in their wheelhouse. So they get frustrated maybe, or, I don't know. But, if you do that, just know, if you do it regularly, you are kind of making an agreement with them that, hey, I'm going to feed you. And then, then if you just decide not to, well, they don't understand that.
Yeah, you might get a window peeker.
Oh, and I'd love a window peeker. Those would be great.
I've heard stories where,
can...
they look in the windows and people get frightened because they moved in and the other people fed them. And they're like, what is this? Why is something banging on the side of my house? What are these? And I think you're right. It's like a contract. I'm going to feed you apples. I'm going to feed you a granola bar or whatever. And I'm sure that they'd love a granola bar. Yeah, of course. It's sweet.
Oh, yeah.
What's not to love about a granola bar, right?
Jar of peanut butter. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, my God.
You could, when Finding Bigfoot did their episode up in the Uwharrie long years ago, after that aired, you couldn't walk through that area without stepping in jars of peanut butter. Everybody was out putting out peanut butter. But yes, I think, the slapping part of the houses, I think that's almost a game. They're just saying, hey, I'm here.
Well, and I often wonder, of course, I think there's some bad humans and there's some phenomenal humans. I'm sure within a species, there's some bad eggs wherever you go.
I would agree, and that's why I said earlier, I'm not saying just throw caution to the wind and
Yeah, go
running
out
in the
there
woods.
with a jar of peanut butter.
You really, you need to think about this stuff. We don't understand them. We can't sit down and just say, Mr. Bigfoot, now would you explain to me why, or at least I can't. Why does this happen? So
Right.
we're different, and that's the part where I think we're a people like each other, but different than each other. They have different understandings of the world and different expectations. So we need to be a little careful about what bargains we may unknowingly enter into.
Yeah. And do you think that they understand when we have our young and we're camping? Do you think they understand that we love our young like they love their young?
Oh, I think they do, definitely. That is a sound that in my years I've come to find out that the sound of children laughing, human children laughing, is a big draw for them.
Interesting.
They're curious and they know what kids are. So I think if they're around, they want to look. That may also, again, this is speculation on my part. That may be an opportunity for them to bring their young in and go, now look, you see those little puny guys out there that don't have any hair? Well, they're usually okay. This is what they look like. They're kind of loud and fussy sometimes, but just understand, for the most part, they're okay. They don't mean to hurt you. So just understand. And I'm being a little silly, but I'm just trying to make a point that, again, we are different, but also alike in some ways.
Yeah. The other thing I'm really curious about, and people always talk about, I think a lot of people like the scarier side of stuff. And I often wonder, because you always hear stories of people disappearing or being attacked. Do you know of any stories where people have actually been protected by these?
Actually, yes. There was an incident not long ago that happened not terribly far from us. It was, I believe, up on the North Carolina coastal area. There was a young child, young boy, I think he was 5, maybe, that wandered off into the woods. And this was a pretty cold time of the year. And the parents, of course, were just beside themselves, and a search ensued. Search and rescue was called in. They covered the area. I mean, they saturated the area and could not find him. And this went on for a couple of days. In the end, they found the young boy in an area they had already searched. And other than being a little hungry, he was fine. And once they got him back and got him cleaned up and checked out and fed, they said, well, what happened to you? And he said, oh, well, this big bear came and took care of me, and it kept me warm at night. It snuggled up with me at night and kept me warm.
Oh, wow.
Now, what bear have you ever heard of that snuggles up with a 5-year-old human child to keep him warm? I would be curious to know if anyone showed him a picture of a bear and a Bigfoot and said, now, which of these looks more like your bear? Because that makes no sense at all. And actually, this time of year, bears around here would have most probably been in hibernation. So, what makes more sense? Was it a rogue bear that just happened to walk by and felt sorry for this poor little human child who could have potentially been a meal? Or was it a Bigfoot who realized that the child was in trouble and just tried to do what he or she could to help it? I would love to interview that child.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder. That's really quite amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it wasn't Bigfoot, even if a bear, I mean, that's just
Yeah, even if it was a
highly,
bear, that's a story that I'd love to hear about. But
yeah.
that doesn't make any sense.
No, bears are normally, you don't want to wake them up when they're hibernating.
No,
They're aggressive.
they're very aggressive. They're ornery. They're
Yeah.
hungry. And a 5-year-old child wandering around in the woods in the middle of the winter, that's called lunch.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Of course, a small child would
Hmm.
definitely see that as, a bear, especially if it was a smaller or maybe a
Right.
female. And it would make sense a female of a species sees a child.
Hmm.
The first thing we're going to do, I mean, heck, I see a kitten, it's a baby, I'm going to protect it.
Right. Right. So,
Interesting.
which makes
Wow.
more sense?
Wow, that's incredible. Now, often people always talk about, and I don't know if you've seen this, Terry, is they often see orbs that follow Bigfoot around. Have you had any experiences with orbs?
Oh, yes.
Really?
That's actually a story I was going to tell you that just recently happened when I went out to visit a friend of mine in Oklahoma. But yes, I have seen, I don't know what the correlation is.
Yeah.
I have seen in the Uwari balls of light that
Mm-hmm.
move around through the trees. Now, in the Uwari, they have a thing called blue ghost fireflies.
Right?
They're a very specific type of fireflies. They don't flicker. They are neon green or neon blue. I'm sorry. The
Wow.
males are white, and the females hug the ground like a carpet and come up a trail, and they just kind of flow over everything like water. The males will fly up out of the swarm and go up high, and kind of like they're doing their "Hey, I'm a guy, check me out" thing,
Yeah.
but they don't flash. They're constantly on, and this truly looks like a scene from the movie Avatar.
Okay.
They just
Awesome.
glow. So I know what those look like. The things that I have seen were not blue ghost fireflies. I don't think they were fireflies at all. The latest ones that I saw when I was out in Oklahoma visiting my friend, I was sitting up one night, and this person has Bigfoot on her property. It's basically a family of them. Didn't get to meet any of them, unfortunately.
You're like, where are you?
Yeah, but I was pretty much I would just went out in this area where they were known to be, and had a tent set up, and I would just spend the evening hours sitting in a camp chair underneath a tree until about 1:30 or 2 in the morning each time, just to look and see what happened. I would just sit and be
Right?
quiet. And the I was there for a couple of nights, I think 3 nights if I remember right. The first night it rained and stormed, and I just stayed in my tent. The second night I was sitting out, and I noticed what looked like a white headlamp. It was a small. It's hard to judge size because I didn't really have a way to. It was dark. I didn't really have a good way to judge how far away it was. I had the sense that it was maybe the size of a quarter,
Yeah.
and it didn't glow like a lightning bug. It was constantly on, but when it moved, it appeared to leave almost a vapor trail of light behind it. And it didn't move slowly, it would dart. And I saw several of those on several occasions each night. I have no idea what they were. They were definitely something in the trees that were around, I don't know, the height of my waist or maybe a little higher, and they would zip a little bit higher, a little bit lower. They didn't just fly slowly; they zipped, almost like the game Pong. If folks out there are old enough to remember that, where the Pong
I
ball
do.
would kind of flick across the screen and leave a little bit of a vapor trail. That's what it
Yeah.
looked like. I talked to my friend about that. the morning that I got up, I said, what the heck am I seeing? Is that something that happens before? She just smiled and said, oh, those are the Fae folk. And, of course, I stopped in my tracks and went, excuse me?
I love the
And
Fae.
she said, no, those are the Fae folk. You saw the fairies. They're here all the time. And that's like when I was, the person was talking to the Bigfoot, and I'm standing there going, what is going on? And I said, well,
Yeah.
what I saw didn't look like Tinkerbell. It was it was a very, very small orb. And my friend said, yeah, that's the Fae folk. So, now I'm dealing with that.
It makes me wonder, though. I mean, Bigfoot is part of nature, and it would make sense that if there is Fae, which is elements and of the forest, it would make perfect sense that they would go hand in hand.
Yeah, I don't know what the correlation is, but there's something. There's a correlation between UFOs and Bigfoot. I don't know what that correlation is.
I have no idea.
There are things that we do not understand, and
Definitely.
I don't know that we ever will. It may not be meant for us.
Not in this time, right?
Not
ready,
in,
maybe?
No, not in this universe. So one of the things that I have learned is that the more I learn, the less I know, and the more questions I have. And I still want to keep going. Like I said, I want to see one. I just really, that's my next, bucket list thing. I just want to see one that I can go, yep, that's one. I see you.
Yeah.
A lot of people ask me.
Them?
I'm sorry?
Have you asked them to show themselves to you?
I haven't. That's a good idea. Why didn't I think of that?
Just ask them, go.
Thank you.
Say, I mean no harm, but I would love to see you like you see me.
Thank you. No, that didn't occur to me.
And tell them, no pictures, nothing.
Yeah.
I just want to see you.
I was just going to say, people ask me a lot of times, well, why don't you have more videos on your social media sites, on your YouTube channel? There's really only 2 that are public videos.
Right.
I've gotten to the point where I don't really shoot videos. I'm not trying to prove Bigfoot's real. I know Bigfoot's real, and if you can make your own decision about that.
Sure.
If Mr. Bigfoot were to walk out of the woods and go, Terry, my people have decided that we need to tell our story and we want you to film me, and I shot that, and it was absolutely perfect, it's fake. Everybody would just tear it apart. It's fake. It's too good.
Yeah, they would. You're right.
On the other end, if I shoot something that's blurry, that's moving, that's dark, that is not well defined, but it's definitely something moving, no, it's blob squatch. It's just, it's not big.
You can't win.
So you can't win. You can't win. So I don't try anymore. I shoot stuff for me. I record things for me so that it's kind of like a diary that I can keep up with incidents and things that happen, so that I don't let important details go away or things creep in, because human beings are absolutely horrible data recorders. Our brains just don't work that way. That's why law enforcement goes through all the training they go through to be able to do interviews and to question subjects and do crime scene investigation. We are horrible at recording data.
Yeah.
So I just do that to kind of maintain the integrity of what happened. And I know people that have gotten photos of them. I've seen a couple that you look at and it's like, and then I've seen a couple more that you look at and go, oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Right.
So I would prefer to be in the moment when I'm in the woods and not worry about cameras.
It's
and
almost
truly,
like...
I've had cameras turn off.
Yeah,
before.
I've heard that. That. People have told me that.
Oh, I was shooting an interview for a channel. We were out in the woods up in Uwharrie, Strange things happen in Uwharrie. And I checked the camera out at base camp. It was a camera I'd used umpteen times before. Everything was perfect. We went to the site where we were going to do the interview, and it's a field where it's an open field where people report all kinds of crazy things, from orbs to Bigfoot to who knows what. I'm standing there doing the interview, and we hear something. We're right beside the tree line, but in the open, and we hear something off to the side in the tree line moving around. And if you watch the video, you could actually see the guys that I'm interviewing looking over from time to time, like, what the heck is going on? But when we got in, I got the people set up, and I turned on the camera, and I got an error on my camera that I have never seen before or since, and it just shut down. And it's like, okay, well, this is weird. I said, guys, give me a minute. I got to figure this out. So I rebooted, turned it on. Same thing. I get this crazy error message, and it shuts off. So at that point, I'm kind of frustrated. So I just said to the air, all right, guys, we're not here to video you. I'm here to shoot these guys doing an interview. We're not going to bother you guys. If you just let us get this done, we'll get on about our business, and we're not going to bother you. I promise we're not here to video you. Turn the camera on. It worked perfectly.
Interesting. So they understand our language, obviously.
I don't know if they understand English or if they understand thoughts or intentions, but there is an understanding somehow.
Gotcha. Terry, before we leave today, if you could say a few words to people, how you feel in what your next adventure is going to be toward these beings. Oh, gosh.
I have no idea. Again, I want to see one, and I'm definitely going to try your idea about just asking. I would say that if you're interested, first of all, again, don't go wandering aimlessly into the woods. Talk to some people, find some people who know a little more and have been doing this. Seek out some people that you trust, and just kind of take their advice, hang out, learn some camping skills, be kind of proficient in being in the woods, be comfortable in the woods, be safe in the woods. But you don't need to go roaming around, tromping everywhere. Just go sit in the woods. Just hang out, enjoy the woods, enjoy nature. And again, if they're interested, they'll find you. Yeah.
Terry, I want to thank you so much. And thank you so much for respecting nature and respecting the beings.
It has been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, hopefully we'll talk again this year.
And hopefully we'll get the camera situation resolved. I am so sorry, and I apologize to your viewers on that.
And if you get to see one, you better email me right away.
Absolutely. I'm going to let you know. I'm going to tell them that you suggested this.
Okay. And tell them if they ever see me in the woods, just peek around the corner and wave.
I will do it.
And I'll tell nobody but Terry. You have a good night, Terry, and thank you for coming on Twilight tonight.
You do the same. I'll be glad to come back anytime. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. See you next week.
The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.